All right, all right, all right. Welcome in to On the Clock NFL Draft Show. This is part of the Toilets to Titles podcast network. And if you aren't living under a rock, you know that today is day one of the Senior Bowl down there in Mobile, Alabama. My guy Ephraim at Mr. Irrelevant on the Twitter. This is his first time at the Senior Bowl. I mean, my first time was last year, so I can't speak like some big shot, man. I'm right there with you. So you're down there and you're doing it solo. You know, some people down there last year I went down there with a big crew. You're going down there like I applaud you for diving in. That just shows how committed you are, man. So how has it been? Tell me, like briefly before we get into the prospects, kind of what's the process been like for you navigating to Alabama? Because you're up in my neck of the woods. You're up in the Northeast. So what was it like going down to Alabama and kind of settling in down there?
It was fun. I flew down from Boston to Atlanta, and then last night I connected from Atlanta down to Alabama, and I get on that flight, and it was just like every single person. It was Monday, 8 p.m. flight. Everyone on that flight was headed to the Senior Bowl. It was like me, the guy sitting next to me was like a videographer. The guy sitting on my right, was another media. Every single person on that plane seemed to be heading down to Mobile, and then I get to the hotel last night, and it was just the same thing. Right, people are sitting down in the lobby chatting. People, breakfast this morning. I got a ride with the guy, who's driving. So it's awesome being down here in Alabama. Just everyone is just this, similar goal, similar mentality, and it's just very. I'll say this: the NFL draft is a very niche hobby. So when a lot of people have that niche, thing they're so obsessed about, it's fun to talk about that with people all day.
Man, good for you. I'm happy for you, man. And next year I'll make sure I'll be down there. We're heading to Killington in like 2 days. So my kids snowboard, my wife snowboards, our whole family's going up there. So I wasn't able to make it down there this year, but I am living vicariously through you and through social media, man. So I'm sure everyone listening, Pete's in here right now. You already donated 99 cents. So I appreciate you, Pete, man. All that money we get from these shows, we're putting into a fund that's going to help us. We're getting multiple houses in Canton for the Fantasy Football Expo. We're going to be putting a lot of people up. Ephraim, you're invited. We're going to be driving down there, man. You could even meet me halfway, and I'll drive the rest of the way. But that's down the road. All right, we're talking NFL draft, so let's kind of dive into. You said you got a ride over to the field. You got into the stadium. Like boom, you walk in. What were some of the things besides even before the players took the field? Maybe did you see any coaches? Did anybody stand out to you? Did you see any big name analysts? Like what kind of stood out to you right away when you got there?
I'll say probably the coolest thing of the day was we saw Mike Tomlin, and then we saw the Steelers owner, Khan, I forgot his first name,
Okay.
walked his car in a rush. And we see him go to his car on the phone, and then literally minutes later, we see Arthur Smith got hired to be the Steelers offensive coordinator. So it was like live action completely. We saw it go down, and then we saw Mike Tomlin talking to a bunch of not only prospects but analysts and other coaches there. So that was cool. There's a lot of big time analysts there. Ian Rappaport, Ari Mirov was behind me in line, so it's fun to chat it up with him. It was basically at the end of the day, everyone gets on the field and talks. So between that, a bunch of positional coaches. I think the Bills linebacker coach was there. Ravens special teams coach was there. So there's a lot of just coaches not only giving instructions to the players but talking to the media and kind of breaking down the drills.
All right. So which team practiced first today?
It was national team offense versus American team defense.
All right. So tell me a little bit about some things that you were looking for when you got there, because I know you've been doing your prep work. You can go to toiletstotitles.com. We have almost 50 player profiles right now. We're going to have our top 50 big board go up there Friday. So we've been diving into this since like the end of the last draft cycle, right? So you came in here with an idea of what to expect. And your eyes are going to be open to some things. That's what happens when you go to Mobile. So what did you kind of expect to see today?
So it was a stacked receiver class in the national team. Guys, first round talent, and just a ton of guys littered amongst day two. And then obviously the quarterbacks, right? Bo Nix and Michael Penix headlined. People were flocking them all throughout the day, interviews, pictures, everything, right? They were the highlights of the events. And then, on the other side, you got Liatu Latu and a couple of nice defenders, Quinion Mitchell, right, from Toledo, another guy, Marshawn Nealand from Western Michigan, I think it is. So I would say this was like the bigger practice with a lot of players. And then honestly, as much as I was expecting big stuff from the quarterbacks, the standouts had to be the receiver group. And the first name that comes to mind is Roman Wilson. He was probably the best player on the field today. He won every single one-on-one drill. He was stacking cornerbacks on 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s. He was winning deep, short, basically everything he wanted. He was getting open, and for a guy who played on Michigan, that wasn't a super pass heavy team. They were run first. He kind of used this opportunity to say, okay, my numbers would have been better if I played for maybe Caleb Williams or Drake May, right? So I have the chance to catch from Michael
That
Penix, which
that
was fun.
that JJ McCarthy's catching strays right now.
Okay, fine. Maybe less so the quarterback. I'd say
No, I'm
more
with
the
you.
offensive scheme at whole, right?
No, I'm with you
He
though.
played great.
I'm not a big JJ McCarthy fan. Uh,
I can't say either.
right.
Yeah. Oh, the quarterbacks. I thought Bo Nix was fine. He missed a few throws, right? Like with Michael Penix and Bo Nix, they're trying to show themselves as first round quarterbacks, and to do that, I think you really need to be perfect, just in all throws in all the field. Like you want to be a franchise quarterback, you have to hit basically all the throws in Mobile, and it was a little hit or miss. It wasn't awful, but I wouldn't say it was anything electric.
Was it 11 on 11 situations when they were throwing, or was it mostly no pass rush, 7v7 today?
It was first it started off with just normal one-on-one 7-on-7, and then it ended up being 11-on-11.
Okay. So did you see any uptick in production from any of the quarterbacks or any drop in production when they went to 11 on 11? Because, I mean, it's one thing throwing 7v7 with no pass rush. It's one thing throwing 1v1. The DBs, I believe, they got the tough job when you're doing one-on-ones. Like wide receivers should win one-on-ones with no pass rush. That's just how it is. But so did anybody rise to the occasion or anybody drop off at the quarterback position?
Bo Nix definitely looked better in 11-on-11. You could see him directing his receivers, right? I think there's two plays in a row, and the first one is receiver. Clearly, there's some missed timing, and then he came over to his receiver, motioned him, he checked a different play, and then actually walked over to his receiver and told him something, and then gave his receiver a pass, right? So you see that from a quarterback who's a fifth or sixth year quarterback at the college level. It's just exactly what you want to see if you're an NFL evaluator. And then I guess on the other side, even going to the next practice, just in terms of 11-on-11s, Spencer Rattler looked great in one-on-ones, and he threw just a not so great pick. Got basically baited by a safety. So yeah, like it obviously gets much tougher once you're dealing with actual safeties in a more condensed field.
How about Michael Pratt? There's like a sub division of Twitter, NFL Twitter, NFL Draft Twitter. He's got some fans. How did he look today?
Yeah, no, totally. Definitely amongst the crowd, everyone was talking about him, right? The first group had Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Sam Hartman, and then the second group of quarterbacks was Joe Milton, Spencer Rattler, the South Alabama Bradley Carter, and then Michael Pratt. So amongst that group, Michael Pratt was the headliner name, and he looked pretty good. He was probably the most accurate quarterback on the one-on-one drills, and then in the 11-on-11s, he looks fine. He didn't show anything super great. There weren't any highlight reel throws, but just in terms of how fast he looked, his mechanics and footwork, he definitely seemed the best of that second group.
All right. So Roman Wilson stood out. You saw some from Penix. You saw some from Rattler, some Knicks. Now let's go to the running back position. Marshawn Lloyd, I saw some clips from him, man. Would you say like so between him, Davis, Ray Davis, Kentucky, what did the running backs look like and who stood out to you?
So Ray Davis did look great. He broke off a long run and just looked great in all the drills. Dylan Lobb, another one, he caught a nice,
Yes, I
pretty
heard
sure
a
it
lot
was
about him today.
he caught a nice wheel route. He looked fast, very fast. So it was great to see him. But the guy who really stood out, as you said, was Marshawn Lloyd. Just a fantastic player. Complete three down back who could catch passes. He caught a couple and set in 11-on-11s, and then he broke off, I think, just what would be a touchdown run in a regular game in practice there, and he was just phenomenal the whole day. Like if anyone came to separate themselves so far from the running back class, it had to be Marshawn Lloyd.
Last year, the Senior Bowl, I mean, Tajay Spears had a huge season. Tulane had a phenomenal year. And in the Senior Bowl was like the icing on the cake for Tajay Spears. He was one of the biggest risers, I think, in the draft. One of them. So I'm interested to see if Marshawn Lloyd has a similar projection swing if he keeps it up this week. Because Tajay just looked like he was moving. Him and Tank Dell last year were two players that seemed to be moving at a completely different speed than everybody else. Now, I'm going to move to another skill position player who's moving at a speed different than anybody else, but not in a good way. And that's Johnny Wilson, the wide receiver for FSU, man. So what are your thoughts on Wilson?
My first notes on Wilson is Johnny Wilson moves like a tight end, right? And that was what people were talking about there because even in the regular season, Johnny Wilson at 6'7" looked much better as an inline, much better in the slot as he did on the outside, right? So you kind of move him into tight end and hoping to block. I heard some people are throwing out, not in terms of the talent level, but in terms of kind of the comp of how to play him, like a Jimmy Graham, right? More receiving tight end you can get in the red zone, which in terms of stylistic comps is, I don't think was that crazy. I think it's pretty good, but he didn't look great. He kind of struggled to separate. He caught everything that came his way, but there were a lot of body catches, a lot of uncomfortable catches, right? So
Right,
I wonder if
right.
they put him out with the tight ends, and in a bad tight end class, right? You got Brock Bowers, Jatavian Sanders, and then I don't even know if there are any other top 100 tight ends. You could throw some names out, but Johnny Wilson would definitely be in the mix if he switched to tight end, and I think he could probably is more enticing as a tight end than he is in the wide receiver.
Yeah, early on in the process, I heard some Devin Funchess comps for Johnny Wilson, and he made a similar move from wide receiver to
Yeah,
tight end. Now, how about my guy Lad McConkey from Georgia? I saw a few clips, man, where he looked like he was creating separation pretty regularly. How'd he look today?
he was fantastic. He may be the best. I mean, in my mind, he was the best skill position player here, and he may be.
That's a
Yeah,
statement. Like
yeah,
that, say it with
yeah.
your chest. So say it again. So tell me that statement again, please, because I need to hear it.
Lad McConkey is the best skill position player down in mobile. He's. I mean, I had him as like a early second grade. Right now, I have him as a late first, and he's only rising. He could become a top 20 pick. And I mean, look up any of his routes.
Top
Not
20
only is he
pick.
winning,
Top 20 pick.
I don't think
Love
he's
it.
going to be a top 20 pick, but I'm fairly not certain because you never know with the draft, but
Right.
it would like he should be one of those wide receivers that goes like back end of the first round because the teams always look for the receivers pick 20 to pick 30 and he will fit that range perfectly. And he wasn't only winning routes, right? Like a lot of these receivers win on the one-on-ones. It was the ways he won. He was stacking. He was using their leverage. He was like putting up nuanced routes that you typically do not see college receivers doing. And he won everything pretty much. He looked fantastic. He a lot of these receivers came in pretty slim, right? Devontae Walker looked super skinny. Brendan Rice looked pretty lanky, and Lad McConkey's pretty filled out. So, right,
I
he was
wonder if they'll
excellent.
shut it down. There were some guys day one last year crushed it, like Puka, shut it down.
Yeah,
So I wonder, I mean, you come out there, you look like the best player day one, his agent might get in his ear and say, yeah, they've seen enough, It'll be interesting to see. But I'm glad you told me that. That is interesting. Now, you were huge on Latu, the edge
uh huh.
defender from UCLA. You were one of the first people talking about him in my circle early in the offseason. I know the measurables, I think the arm length was a little short, but what did you see from him that made you believe that's not going to be an issue?
So the arm length definitely is something, and in one-on-ones, it definitely does play a part. And he isn't he's a great athlete, but he isn't, the twitchy athlete a Chop Robinson or Dallas Turner might be. So he doesn't explode off the screen in these one-on-ones, but his bend is ridiculous and he was winning and he was throwing a flurry of moves, spin move, cross chop, swipes, rips, right? And he could kind of putting on a show on all these one-on-ones. So he went against Talise Fuaga from Oregon State,
Right.
lost, but then he beat Tyler Guyton. He beat a couple of other, top 50 tackles and I mean, he's known right now as the best edge rusher at mobile. And I mean, he's pretty much cemented himself as a first round pick already. But he looked great. Nothing. I want to say like he dominated today, but he definitely looked the part.
Now, you mentioned Tyler Guyton. He's a player who's been rising. I've heard draft analysts I respect compare him to Tyron Smith because Tyron Smith was very young when he entered the draft. I believe he just turned 20, coming out of USC, a mammoth of a man. Do you think those comps, after seeing him in person, are fair, or do you think it's a stretch?
So I had the opportunity to literally stand right next to him on the field,
Right,
and he is massive. The only player that kind of blew up more just in terms of watching him was Houston's Patrick Paul, who just is comically large.
right.
But Tyler Guyton looked great. He also looked athletic, right? He seems very filled out. It doesn't seem like any of the weight is extra, and he looked the part today in drills, right? He won most of his reps. He was facing against many of the top edge rushers, and from a guy who's mostly and that wins mostly off athleticism, he was showing some more in terms of balance, in terms of hand placement, and active hands and striking, right? So in the more technical aspects of pass blocking, he looked definitely much better than he did in the regular season.
Now, another player I've been hearing a lot about is Oregon center Jackson Powers Johnson. I heard he got reps at multiple different offensive line positions. I mean, as a center, skill wise, talent wise, he's a top 40 prospect. But because he's a center, people have him outside of the 40, I think, just because of where people value centers. But being able to play multiple positions on the offensive line and being very sound and talented is going to raise his stock a little bit. So, what did you see from Jackson Powers Johnson today?
He was great. Another guy who just everyone was talking about, all the media, a few scouts I heard were dropping his name in there, right? He's definitely the big riser, especially with the other top center, Zach Frazier, not being able to practice this week. And he was great. He had a couple of mauling blocks. He just looks big and strong and physical, which shows up in these one-on-one scenarios. So he was great.
Now, is there any other bigs on the offensive or defensive side of the ball that stood out to you that we didn't mention?
Michael Hall from Ohio State was excellent. He had one rep in particular where he threw a bunch of rip moves and won easily, and he had a spin move a few plays later, which is excellent. Tavondre Sweat, just seeing him on the field, I mean, he's just this big dude who was just eating up blocks. Players were running it, and he was just blowing up every run play possible. So he was great. And then most of the standouts were on the love to see George. Got
Come
to got
on,
to meet George
George.
for the first time.
Yeah, heck yeah, George. Come on in, man. You know the StreamYard link, buddy. But go ahead, Evan.
I just say I had a wonderful time meeting George
Great guy.
today for the first time.
Uh-huh. Gentle giant.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Michael Hall, Tavondre Sweat were the key standouts. And then yeah, I would say like the defensive line didn't show much. I also happened to be more with the receivers and corners. So tomorrow, hopefully, I'll get a little more just on offensive defensive line.
Now, linebacker. The well is dry, right? That's at least what people think. And I'm a Cowboys fan, man. You're a 49ers fan. Linebackers fall off trees for you guys. For us, not so much. We are desperate need for a linebacker. I know Cedric Gray's down there. I'm interested in him. Peyton Wilson from NC State, tons of injuries. I wrote a profile of him back up in September. Super athletic, rangy, productive, but I don't see any true alpha Mike. Tell me about what you saw from the linebackers today, and if there were any standouts. Because last year we had Dayon Henley. Like there were guys who rose, and who's the cat who went to Minnesota? Who got reps
Oh,
like
Ivan Pace.
Ivan Pace, and Henley just stole the show. It didn't matter their size. Last year they came out like a balls of fire and earned. I mean, even though Pace didn't even get drafted high, I think he was seventh round or later, and he's
Yeah.
starting. So, is there anybody you're there in person that you're seeing that you're like, you know what, this dude is legit?
So you said it yourself, Cedric Gray, who I watched 2 nights ago and was super excited to see him down. And I don't think any of these linebackers are phenomenal, but if you're taking any of them in the first 2 rounds, I think it's Cedric Gray because he could play. He could play the run. He can come downhill as a blitzer. He could run side to side, and he had pretty good coverage in sync. So he racked up a few interceptions, and he looked pretty good today. A little small, and I don't think he has the most length at the position, but in a weak linebacker class like this, he's the guy I would take. And then an interesting name who was originally not a linebacker is James Williams from Miami, who's a former 5-star safety, 6'5", 230, ridiculous athlete who is transitioning now to linebacker position. So it's been a Senior Bowl story today. I got the chance to interview him a little bit, asking him about how he reads the offense. He loves the game of football. It was evident from the couple sentences I got to speak to him. And if you're making that transition to linebacker, you both have to be an athletic freak, which he is, and you have to be an intelligent football player, which he is.
Yes,
So
and
there's
tough.
no guarantees, but he looked great today.
Excellent, excellent. Now, are there any DBs that I know Kinchins is down there? You mentioned Mitchell. Wade Smith is a guy I'm interested in. I saw him had a few reps where he struggled a little bit against Malachi Corley, who's a guy I'm interested in. I ask you, I
Mhm.
want you to watch him tomorrow for me because I'm very interested in him. But which DB stood out to you?
Chris Abrams Drain from Missouri looked great. He's definitely small. A lot of these cornerbacks without pads look, pretty tiny, to be honest. But he was phenomenal today. Super smooth feet, fluid. Had a play where he basically smothered. He ran the receiver's route for him, which is the ideal in these one-on-ones. DJ James from Auburn, 6'4" and I think like 180, so very light. But also another great player, fantastic. And then you said Quinion Mitchell was a lot of people's top player on defense. People say he's better than Latu in the defensive end, but sorry, on the defensive side. That's not personally my take, but he was fantastic. Broke up a lot of plays, just looked the part for a guy who won, played in a weaker system at Toledo, and then also basically only played off man. To have him press against these top receivers was exactly what you wanted to see out of him, and the way he did it was exactly what you might be looking for.
Excellent, excellent. I know a Toledo guy who came to Mobile on the other side of the ball, crushed it. Kareem Hunt came into the NFL, dominated. So I mean, there's the pipeline from Toledo to Mobile to the NFL.
Yeah.
All right, Ephraim. Tomorrow, what are you looking forward to, man? What's on the agenda for day 2
So I said
or
I
day
want to
3
get some
rather?
more yeah, some more offensive defensive line, right? He said Tyler Guyton, Patrick Paul, BYU's Kingsley Suamatea, Jackson Power Johnson again, right? This is the time I'm gonna go down tomorrow and just get to watch, the big offensive defensive linemen go up against each other. Some more Tavondre Sweat. Brandon Dorless, who I got to interview today, again, came down at 270, and people don't really know if he's an edge or if he's an interior player, but phenomenal talent. So there's a lot of good trench players tomorrow. So I'm excited to see that. And then, hopefully it's hard for you see these one-on-one drills, it's definitely built towards the offense, but it's hard for the receiver and the quarterback to build some sort of chemistry after one day.
Yeah.
So hopefully, going into day 2, like Sam Hartman, Bo Nix, Michael Penix can start getting more chemistry to the receivers. And honestly, one of the highlights was just seeing Michael Penix throw to Roman Wilson all day and just them linking up after the championship game. So
Right.
there's a lot of jokes about that.
Oh
So
man, I get
hopefully the
that.
chemistry
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah, that one flew
Yeah.
over my head briefly until now I get it. Yeah, competing against each other. Well, hey man, I'm proud of you for doing this, man. We've been friends for I think almost like 2 years now. I've been watching you progress and been a part of your progression in some form. And proud of you. And I mean, young guy going down there, taking the step. It just shows how committed you are to this craft and how dedicated and tell George he's got to take care of you down there, man. So if you need anything, reach out to me. But everybody listening at home, follow Ephraim. Ephraim, tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter because you are posting tons of blurbs and updates throughout the day. And who knows, Ephraim might be going out tonight, might bump into some people. So you want to follow him now so you can get the juice and the inside scoop of what's going on in Mobile.
You can catch me over at Twitter at Mr. Irrelevant, where the I is a 1. And then honestly, hit me up, DM me with any players you want to see, videos, interviews, and I'll make sure to make that happen. And then everything I post goes over to Toilets Titles. So, of course, make sure to check that out as well.
Man, and I know I know the DMs are open, man, because me and you were throughout Mobile. I was there last year. You were DMing me, so now you get to return the favor to somebody else. So everybody, make sure you tune in about 5 minutes because Toilets Titles is going to going live. We're going to be talking a lot of fantasy football, recapping the 2023 NFL and fantasy football season. So Ephraim, I'll be talking to you after this, and everybody listening at home, we appreciate you. We will catch you all later on.